A broke Chicago waitress called the city's most feared Mafia king and whispered, "Your son is bleeding behind my restaurant." What happened next shut down half the city. On a freezing January night, Avery Brooks stepped into a narrow alley with $43 in tips, an overdue rent notice, and no idea that her life was about to collide with Damian Cross. Snow covered the pavement. Blood marked the white ground. A terrified boy reached for her hand and begged her not to call the police. This is more than a story about danger power and forbidden attraction. It is about what happens when protection becomes control, when loyalty hides betrayal, and when one ordinary woman sees the truth powerful men miss. Stay until the end, because one small detail changes everything. Like the video and comment where you are watching from. 8 hours before Avery Brooks knelt in the snow with Damian Cross's son bleeding in her arms, she was standing beneath the kitchen lights of the Marlowe, counting money that was already gone. $43 in tips, $12 for the train pass, $26 for her mother's prescription. That left $5 and a handful of coins for everything else. Avery folded the bills once, then again, pressing the edges flat with her thumb as if neatness might somehow make the amount larger. Around her, the employee locker room hummed with the sounds of another dinner shift beginning. Metal doors slammed, shoes scraped across the tile. Someone sprayed perfume near the cracked mirror to cover the smell of onions and fryer oil clinging to everyone's uniforms. Inside Avery's locker sat an envelope marked "Final Notice." She turned it face down. Her phone began to vibrate. "Mom," Avery answered before the second ring. "Hey, did you eat?" There was a pause on the other end. Not long enough to cause panic, just long enough for Avery to know the answer. "I had toast," Janet Brooks said. "Toast is not dinner. It had butter. That does not make it dinner." Janet gave a tired laugh that dissolved into a cough. Avery closed her eyes and listened carefully, counting the seconds until her mother's breathing settled. "You sound exhausted," Janet said. "I am standing in a luxury restaurant where people pay $30 for lettuce. I am surrounded by inspiration. You could come home and tell the pharmacy we changed our minds about the medication. The prescription can wait another day." "No. Avery. No." Her answer came too quickly, too sharply. She softened her voice. "I will pick it up after work. You said that yesterday. Tonight I mean it. Rent comes first. Breathing comes first." The locker room door opened. A server rushed in, muttering about a private party arriving early. Avery turned toward the wall and lowered her voice. "Did you call the clinic?" "They called me, and they want another scan." Avery stared at the dented locker door. "Why?" "They said the blood work changed. How much I did not ask." "Mom, I did not ask because we do not have it." Avery pressed 2 fingers against the bridge of her nose. "We will figure it out. You always say that, because we always do." Janet was quiet. The silence between them carried more truth than either woman wanted to touch. Avery had left nursing school 18 months earlier when Janet became too sick to work. At first, she told herself the break would last 1 semester. Then 1 semester became 2. Tuition notices turned into collection calls. Clinical textbooks were sold online. Her scrubs remained folded inside a drawer she rarely opened. On the locker door, beneath a photograph of Avery wearing those scrubs, an unopened envelope waited. The community college logo was printed in the corner, a chance to reapply. She had carried it for 3 weeks without reading beyond the first sentence. Janet spoke again. "You cannot keep working doubles." "I can until someone makes the day longer." "You think that is funny?" "I think everything is funny after 11 at night." "You are 27 years old, Avery. I am aware. You should have a life. I have a life. You have a uniform." Avery looked down at the white shirt and black vest that smelled faintly of coffee. That was rude. It was accurate. Someone knocked on the locker room door. "Avery, table 12 in 5 minutes." She raised her voice. "I am coming." Then she returned to the call. "I have to go. Do not spend all your tips on my prescription. I will spend them however I want. You inherited that stubbornness from your father." "No. He left before he could give me anything." Janet sighed. The cough returned softer this time. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." Avery waited until her mother ended the call. Then she opened her locker and looked again at the photograph in the blue scrubs. For a moment, she could almost smell the hospital soap and hear the quiet confidence of her instructors telling her she had good hands. Steady hands, the kind patients trusted. She closed the locker before the memory could become another thing she could not afford. The Marlowe occupied the ground floor of a restored stone building in River North. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a street lined with black cars, glowing storefronts, and snow darkened by traffic. Inside, everything was polished. Brass lamps, white tablecloths, crystal glasses arranged with military precision. The rich came there to feel important. The staff came there because importance left tips. Avery stepped onto the floor carrying a tray of sparkling water. Maggie Hart intercepted her near the bar. Maggie was the evening manager, a woman who wore narrow suits and the expression of someone constantly disappointed by everyone around her. "Table 12 is yours." Avery followed her gaze. 3 black vehicles had stopped outside. Men in dark coats emerged first, scanning the sidewalk and the windows. One opened the rear door of the center vehicle. The atmosphere inside the restaurant changed before the man stepped out. A city official near the front window lowered his voice. 2 businessmen who had been laughing seconds earlier suddenly asked for their checks. A woman at the bar turned her face toward her drink. Damian Cross entered with his 10-year-old son. Avery had seen photographs of him in newspapers, sometimes beside a mayor at a charity event, sometimes leaving a courthouse after charges vanished for lack of evidence. The articles called him a hotel owner, a private security investor, a restaurant executive. People in Chicago called him other things when they believed nobody was listening. He was taller than Avery expected, not enormous, not theatrical. He did not need to fill the room with noise because the room adjusted itself around him. His black coat was perfectly fitted. His expression revealed nothing. Beside him walked Eli Cross. The boy wore a navy wool coat buttoned to the throat. His hair had been combed with care, but one piece had fallen across his forehead. He carried a large sketchbook against his chest. 4 security men entered with them. The final man through the door was Caleb Shaw. He moved differently from the guards. He did not scan the room for danger. He scanned it for weaknesses. Maggie leaned close to Avery. "Do not make conversation. I usually charge extra for conversation. I am serious. So am I. Do not ask questions. Do not touch anything on their table unless you are told. Do not spill anything. And do not look Mr. Cross directly in the eyes." Avery glanced toward table 12. Damian was already seated. Eli sat across from him while Caleb remained at the outer edge of the booth. "What happens if I look at him?" Maggie's mouth tightened. "Try not to find out." Avery picked up 2 menus. She had served men who shouted, men who grabbed, men who treated money like permission. Damian Cross did none of those things. That did not make him safe. It made him controlled. She approached the table. "Good evening." Damian did not look up from the message on his phone. Sparkling water. No lemon. Eli opened the menu, but did not seem to read it. "Can I have a soda?" "No," Damian said. The answer arrived without thought. Eli lowered his eyes. Avery looked from father to son. "We make ginger ale in the kitchen." Damian raised his gaze. His eyes were dark and direct. Maggie's warning returned to Avery a second too late. "I said no soda. It is not soda." Caleb looked at her as though she had walked into the wrong house and sat at the wrong table. Avery kept her expression calm. Fresh ginger lime honey and sparkling water. Less sugar than the lemonade. Damien studied her. Eli remained perfectly still, waiting. "Bring the ginger ale," Damien said. A tiny smile touched Eli's mouth. Avery took the rest of the order and returned to the service station. Maggie appeared instantly. "What did you say to him? I described a beverage?" "You argued. I clarified. You do understand who that is?" "Yes." "Table 12. Maggie looked ready to answer, but a waiter dropped a tray near the kitchen entrance. The crash split through the restaurant. Glasses shattered across the tile. Avery turned. At table 12, Eli had ducked beneath the edge of the booth. His hands covered his head. His shoulders shook with short, sharp breaths. Damien reached toward him. Avery arrived first. She crouched beside the booth but did not touch the boy. "Eli, look at me." His eyes found hers, wide and unfocused. "Name 5 blue things in this room." He stared at her. "What 5 blue things?" "Start with my pen." She held up the pen clipped to her apron. He swallowed. "Your pen." "Good. 4 more." His gaze moved. "The painting." 3 more. "The flowers near the window. They are purple. They look blue from here. Then they count." His breathing slowed by a fraction. "The man's tie." Avery glanced toward a banker sitting nearby. 1 more." Eli searched the room. "Your eyes." Avery smiled. "Mine are gray. They look blue, too. Then we have 5. The tension in his shoulders eased. Damien watched her with an expression she could not read. "You have done that before," he said. "I studied nursing. Studied I did not finish. Why not?" Avery rose. "That question was not part of your dinner order." Caleb's eyebrows lifted. Eli looked between them. "Why does counting blue things work?" "It gives your brain another job," Avery said. "Fear wants all your attention. You make it share." Eli considered that. "Does it always work?" "No." "But it can help." Damien looked at his son. The boy was calmer now, but his fingers still gripped the edge of the table. "You should have told me the noise bothered you," Damien said. Eli stared down at the menu. "You do not like it when things bother me." Something moved in Damien's face. A small fracture closed almost immediately. Avery stepped away before she became part of a conversation that did not belong to her. Dinner continued. Damien spoke quietly with Caleb about shipping schedules and a problem at one of the river warehouses. Eli ate slowly, drawing between courses. Avery returned with plates and noticed that his sketchbook contained no faces. Bridges filled the pages. Train stations, rooftops, alleys, fire escapes, the city drawn in careful black lines. "You like buildings," she said. "They stay where you put them. Most of the time. People do not." Damien heard him. He did not respond. Avery cleared an empty plate and went to the kitchen. The pastry chef had made an extra apple tart after one cracked in the pan. Avery set it on a small plate and added a candle from the birthday supply drawer. When she returned, she placed it in front of Eli. Damien looked at the dessert. "We did not order that. It is from the kitchen. There is no birthday. Candles work on regular days." Eli looked at Avery. "Why?" "Because you looked like someone who needed one decision nobody else made for him." The guards remained expressionless, but Caleb's gaze sharpened. Eli looked toward his father. Damien leaned back in the booth. He said nothing. Eli bent forward and blew out the flame. "What did you wish for?" Avery asked. "If I tell you, it will not happen." His eyes moved toward the guard standing behind him. Avery understood. So did Damien. For several seconds, the sound of the restaurant seemed to move far away. Then Caleb's phone vibrated. He checked the screen and excused himself. Near the bar, he spoke with Dean Mercer, Damien's head of security. Avery knew Dean only by position. He had the posture of a man who never fully relaxed, even while standing still. Caleb kept his voice low. "The morning convoy is changing." Dean frowned. "Why construction on Lakeshore Drive? I have not seen an alert. Operations received it." Dean crossed his arms. "Which section?" "Near the northern entrance. That does not affect the Tudor route. It will if traffic backs into the Gold Coast." Caleb glanced toward Eli. "Which vehicle carries him tomorrow?" Dean's face hardened. "We do not discuss the boy's movement in public. I manage transportation. You manage freight." Caleb smiled. "Still doing everything by the book. That is why the boy is alive." The smile left Caleb's face for less than a second. Avery was passing with a tray when she saw it. Not anger, not embarrassment. Something colder. Calculation. A busboy stepped between them, blocking her view. When Avery looked again, Caleb was smiling. Damien paid the bill without reviewing it. The tip was large enough to cover Janet's prescription twice. Avery stared at the number, then folded the receipt and slid it into her apron. Outside, the snow had thickened. The security team moved first, checking the sidewalk and the waiting vehicles. Avery found Eli's sketchbook beneath the booth. She hurried after them. Eli stood beside the center vehicle while Damien spoke with Dean. "You forgot this." Eli took the sketchbook. "Thank you." Avery noticed a drawing visible on the open page. It showed the Chicago River with every bridge raised at once. "No people," she said. "Buildings do not leave." The answer was identical to the one he had given earlier, but his voice was quieter now. Damien turned toward them. For the first time, Avery saw something unguarded in his expression. Pain. Then it disappeared. Across the street, beneath a flickering lamp, a gray sedan sat at the curb. One headlight appeared dimmer than the other. A man behind the wheel held a newspaper too high. Avery looked at the snow gathered on the roof of the vehicle. The windshield was clear. Exhaust curled from the tailpipe. The car had been there for some time. The driver noticed her attention and raised the newspaper another inch. Avery looked at Dean. "Do you know that car?" Dean turned. The sedan pulled into traffic. "Which car?" "The gray one. Parked across the street." "How long was it there?" "At least 10 minutes. "How do you know there was snow on the roof but the windshield was clear?" "The engine was running." Dean spoke into his radio. Damien watched the sedan disappear at the corner. "Did you see the driver, man?" "Dark coat. He covered his face when I looked at him." Caleb stepped out of the restaurant. "Probably a reporter." Avery looked at him. "Reporters usually take pictures. Maybe he was bad at his job." "Maybe." Damien reached into his coat and removed a black metal card. No name. No company. Only a telephone number engraved into the surface. He held it out to Avery. "If you see that vehicle again, call me." She did not take the card. "I am a waitress, Mr. Cross, not one of your informants. You saw someone watching my son when 4 trained men did not. That should concern you more than it flatters me." Dean looked down, hiding what might have been the beginning of a smile. Damien continued holding the card. "Take the number." Avery took it. The metal was cold against her palm. Eli climbed into the vehicle. Before the door closed, he looked back at Avery. "Good night." "Good night, Eli." The convoy moved away from the curb. Avery watched until the final vehicle disappeared into the snow. Inside the center SUV, Eli rested his sketchbook on his knees. Damien sat beside him. "What did you wish for?" Eli looked out the window. "You said wishes do not work. I said no such thing. You said they are for people who do not have plans." Damien remembered saying it years earlier. Eli had been 6, asking whether they could wish for his mother to come home from the hospital. "I was wrong," Damien said. Eli looked at him. Damien rarely used those words. "What did you wish for?" he asked again. Eli traced a bridge line on the cover of his sketchbook. "To go somewhere without guards." Damien's jaw tightened. "That is not possible." "Then why did you ask?" Damien looked toward the window. The city passed in blurred gold and white. At the residence, the security gate opened before the convoy arrived. Dean checked every vehicle before Eli stepped out. The gray sedan did not appear again. Inside the house, a staff member brought Eli upstairs. Damien entered his office with Caleb and Dean. Caleb placed a folder on the desk. The Kane organization moved 3 trucks through the southern corridor this week. "Legal cargo?" Damien asked. "On paper. And in reality, we do not know." Dean remained near the door. Damien looked at him. "What?" "The sedan bothered me." Caleb removed his gloves. "Avery bothered you. She noticed surveillance before we did. She noticed a parked car. She noticed the driver avoiding identification." Caleb poured himself a drink without asking. "Your waitress may have an active imagination." "She is not my waitress," Damien said. Caleb paused. Then he smiled. "Of course." Dean's phone rang. He listened for several seconds. His face changed. "There is an emergency at the river warehouse." "What kind?" Damien asked. "Fire alarm and possible breach." Caleb set down his glass. "I was there this morning." Dean moved toward the door. "I am taking the response unit." Damien looked at the security monitor displaying Eli's hallway. "Who remains on the residence detail team 2? Full coverage. Go." Dean left. Caleb stayed long enough to review the next morning's schedule, then returned to his own office across the city. At 11:19, a secure message appeared on his phone. The river warehouse alarm had been triggered remotely. Dean and half the primary security team were now 12 minutes away from the residence. Caleb opened a private application hidden behind a calculator icon. He typed one sentence. "Proceed." At 11:30, a black SUV arrived at the Cross residence. The driver presented valid credentials. His face matched the digital security file. The vehicle identification number matched a Cross transport car. The guard at the gate received confirmation from operations. The confirmation had been sent from Caleb's system. Upstairs, Eli sat at his desk drawing the alley behind the Marlowe. He had remembered the brick walls, the metal stairs, and the yellow light above the service door. A staff member entered. "Your father changed the schedule. You are leaving early for tomorrow's lesson." Eli frowned. At night, the tutor moved the session. Eli closed the sketchbook. The replacement driver waited beside the rear door. His cap sat low over his eyes. Eli stepped into the vehicle. The interior smelled faintly of gasoline. He looked toward the second row. A man sat there wearing leather gloves. Another man pulled the door closed behind him. Eli reached for the handle. The driver locked it. "What are you doing?" The man in the second row caught Eli's arm. Eli kicked hard, striking someone in the mouth. A curse filled the vehicle. A sleeve pulled back during the struggle. On the man's wrist, Eli saw a black crown split through the center, the same symbol worn by men who stood near his father. He screamed. A cloth pressed against his face. The vehicle accelerated through the gate. Across town, Caleb sat alone in his office. His phone vibrated. Package secured. He read the message once. Then he deleted it. At the Marlowe, Avery continued working. A couple celebrating an anniversary complained that their table was too close to the kitchen. A businessman sent back a steak he had ordered well done because it was not pink enough. Maggie blamed Avery for both problems. Near 11, a man at the bar caught Avery by the wrist when she turned away. "Come back," he said. She pulled free. "Do not touch me." He smiled. "I was getting your attention." "You have it now." Maggie hurried over. "Is there a problem?" The customer lifted his glass. "Your server is rude." Maggie turned to Avery. "Apologize. He grabbed me. He is a guest." "I noticed." Maggie lowered her voice. "Do you need this job?" Avery looked toward the man. He was already smiling again because he knew the answer. She placed the check in front of him. "I apologize that you confused paying for dinner with buying another person." Maggie's face went pale. The customer demanded a manager. Maggie spent 10 minutes calming him and 20 minutes telling Avery she could be replaced. Avery finished the shift anyway. At 12:03, she counted her tips in the locker room. The amount from Damien's table remained folded separately. Enough for the prescription, not enough for rent. She put on her coat, wrapped her scarf around her neck, and slipped the black metal card into the inner pocket. The front entrance had already been locked. She left through the service door. Snow moved through the alley in silver sheets. The city sounded distant between the brick walls. Avery walked quickly, thinking about the pharmacy that stayed open all night near the train station. She thought about Janet's cough, the final notice, the nursing letter waiting inside her locker. Then she heard metal scrape against brick. She stopped. An overturned trash can rolled slowly across the pavement. Beyond it, beside a stack of delivery crates, something moved in the snow. A small hand. Avery dropped her bag and ran. Eli Cross lay beneath the yellow service light, blood frozen along the side of his face. His coat was open. One shoe was missing. His lips were turning blue. Avery fell to her knees. "Eli, can you hear me?" His eyelids opened. "Avery, I am here." His fingers found her sleeve. "They said my dad would know. Who said that Eli tried to move and cried out. I cannot get up." Avery reached into her coat. Her hand closed around the black metal card Damien had given her only hours earlier. For 1 second, Avery stared at the number engraved across its surface. Then Eli made a small sound through his teeth, and hesitation disappeared. She pulled off one glove and pressed 2 fingers against the side of his neck. His pulse was fast and thin. Too fast. "Eli, do not try to sit up." "I am cold." "I know." She checked his breathing without moving his head. Each breath came shallow, followed by a tremor that passed through his entire body. Blood had dried along his temple. A dark stain spread beneath the shoulder of his coat. His right wrist showed angry red marks, as if a cord had been pulled tight against the skin. Avery looked toward the entrance of the alley. No pedestrians, no open doors. Only snow brick and the distant glow of traffic passing on the main street. Someone had left him here. Someone might still be watching. She called the number. It rang once. A man answered without greeting. "Who is this?" Avery held the phone between her shoulder and ear while she loosened Eli's scarf. "Mr. Cross, this is Avery Brooks. I work at the Marlowe." Silence. She heard movement on the other end. A chair sliding across a floor. A door opening. "Why are you calling me?" Avery looked down at Eli. "Your son is behind the restaurant." The silence changed. It became something alive. "He is bleeding," she continued. "He is conscious, but barely. He says he cannot stand." For the first time since Avery had met Damien Cross, he had no immediate answer. Then his voice returned, stripped of everything but control. "Is he breathing?" "Yes." "Is he moving his arms?" "His left hand." "I have not asked him to move the other one. Do not move his neck." "I know." Damien stopped. "You have medical training." "Some." "How long has he been outside? I do not know." "Stay on the line." Avery heard him call for Dean. A second voice answered from a distance. "What happened?" Damien's reply was low. "They took Eli." The room on the other end erupted into motion. Avery removed her coat and placed it over Eli's chest. Snow landed instantly across the black fabric. Damien returned to the call. "Tell me exactly where you are." "Service alley behind the Marlowe. North end near the loading crates. Are there vehicles nearby? Number, people number, any sign of the men who left him? I have not seen anyone." Avery looked toward the street again. A dark vehicle passed the mouth of the alley and continued without slowing. Her stomach tightened. "Someone may be watching," she said. "Can you move to cover?" "Not without leaving him." "Then do not leave him." His answer came too quickly to contain thought. Avery touched Eli's cheek. His skin was dangerously cold. "Eli, stay awake." His eyelids lifted. "My dad? He is coming." Eli tried to swallow. "They said he would." "Who?" "The men." "What did they say?" His face twisted with pain. Dad would know what Eli's eyes closed again. Avery tapped his cheek lightly. "Stay with me. Tell me what you were drawing at dinner." "The river." "Which bridge?" "All of them." "That is a lot of bridges." I did not finish. "Then you are not allowed to sleep." His fingers tightened weakly around hers. On the phone, Damien issued orders. "Close every private airfield. Send the plates to every crew on the interstate. Check the train stations and the river routes." Dean asked, "Do we have a vehicle now?" "Then who are we looking for?" "Everyone." Avery heard doors slam. An engine started. Damien spoke to her again. "Is he shivering?" "Yes. That is good. It will not be good for long." "How long do I have?" Avery looked at Eli's breathing. "I cannot answer that." "You studied nursing." "I studied enough to know better than to make promises in an alley." A pause. Then Damien said, "Good." The word surprised her. "What? Do not tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what is true." Avery looked down at the boy. His breathing is shallow. His pulse is weak. There may be internal bleeding. His pupils are not equal. Damien inhaled once. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Keep talking to him." Avery took Eli's hand between both of hers. "Tell me about the bridge you like best." "The DuSable Bridge." "Why?" "The towers." "What about them?" "They look like they are guarding the river." "Do they do a better job than your father's guards?" Eli opened his eyes. A faint, painful smile touched his mouth. "Do not tell him I said that. I think he heard you." Damien was silent for half a second. Then Avery heard something she did not expect. A breath that might have been a laugh broken almost immediately by fear. Eli's expression changed. His gaze fixed on the darkness behind Avery. She turned quickly. Nothing moved. "What is it?" "The car." "What car?" "The one that took me." "Is it here?" He shook his head and winced. "Gray." Avery remembered the sedan outside the restaurant. One dim headlight. A driver hiding behind a newspaper. Her grip tightened around the phone. "Mr. Cross. The gray car from earlier may be connected." Damien's voice sharpened. "What did Eli say?" "He says the car that took him was gray." "Did he see a plate?" Eli whispered something Avery could not hear. She leaned closer. "Say that again." One light was darker. Avery looked toward the street. The vehicle had one dim headlight. The sedan I saw outside the Marlowe had the same thing. Dean's voice came over Damien's speaker. "We are 2 minutes out." The wind pushed snow through the alley. Eli's shivering began to weaken. Avery felt panic rise but kept her face calm. "Eli, look at me." He did. 5 blue things. There are none. Then 5 sounds. He listened. Cars. Good. Wind. 3 more. Your voice. Avery swallowed. 2 more. Sirens. The sound grew louder. What is the last one? Eli stared at her. My dad. Black vehicles appeared at both ends of the alley. Doors opened before the cars stopped moving. Men in dark coats stepped into the snow with weapons drawn. Avery instinctively leaned over Eli. Damien emerged from the lead vehicle without an overcoat. He crossed the alley at a run. For a moment, everything she had heard about him disappeared. There was no crime boss, no whispered name, no man who could close roads with a phone call. There was only a father looking at his child in the snow. Damien stopped beside them. His face went still. The stillness was worse than rage. He reached for Eli. Avery blocked his arm. Do not move him. Every man in the alley froze. Damien looked at her hand against his chest. No one touches me. Then decide whether being obeyed matters more than your son's spine. Dean lowered his weapon slightly. No one spoke. Damien looked down at Eli, then back at Avery. What do you need? A neck brace, oxygen, thermal blankets, and paramedics prepared for internal bleeding. Damien turned. Now! The alley exploded into movement. A private medical team rushed forward from the second vehicle. One paramedic knelt beside Avery and began assessing Eli. You did not move him, no. Loss of consciousness, in and out. Vomiting, no. Possible head trauma. Yes, unequal pupils. The paramedic looked at her. You medical former nursing student. You kept him alive. Avery did not answer. The team fitted a brace around Eli's neck and transferred him onto a board. Damien stayed beside his son. Eli. The boy opened his eyes. Dad, I am here. Eli's gaze moved toward Avery. She came. I know. They said she would. Damien's expression changed. Who said that? The men. Eli fought to remain conscious. One had your mark. Damien bent closer. What mark? The crown. Dean looked up. Damien did not move. Only a small number of senior members in his organization carried the broken crown tattoo. The mark was not decoration. It signified trust earned through years of service. Where did you see it? Damien asked. On his wrist? Did you see his face? No. Did he say a name? Eli's lips trembled. He said you would blame Cain. Damien's eyes hardened. The paramedic moved between them. We need to transport him. Damien climbed into the ambulance. Before the doors closed, he looked at Avery. You are coming. I can follow. You are not walking home. That was not my plan. It is not a request. Avery looked at Eli. His hand still held the edge of her coat. She climbed inside. The ambulance pulled away through the snow. Damien sat on one side of the stretcher. Avery sat on the other. The medical team worked between them. No one spoke unless it was necessary. The city passed outside in streaks of white and gold. Damien watched every movement of the paramedic's hands. When the heart monitor changed rhythm, his jaw tightened. When Eli's eyes opened, he leaned closer. When they closed, he said the boy's name. Avery had seen fear take many forms. Some people cried. Some prayed. Some became angry at anyone within reach. Damien became quieter. By the time they reached North Shore Crown Medical Center, the hospital entrance had been cleared. Security guards held back staff and patients while the ambulance moved directly into a private trauma bay. Doctors surrounded Eli. A nurse stopped Damien at the doors. You need to wait here. I am going with him. You cannot enter the treatment room. Damien stepped closer. The nurse did not move. Avery watched him fight the instinct to turn fear into command. Finally, he stopped. The doors closed between him and his son. For several seconds, Damien stood motionless. Blood covered his hands. Dean arrived with 6 security men. Caleb followed behind them, breathing hard as if he had rushed from across the city. "What happened?" Caleb asked. Damien did not look away from the treatment room. Someone took him from the house. Caleb's face tightened in practiced shock. "How?" "We are finding out. This has Kane written all over it." Avery sat in a chair near the wall. A nurse had wrapped a heated blanket around her shoulders, but she was still wearing wet clothes and no coat. Caleb continued. "The Kane crew has been testing the southern corridor for months. We should hit them now before they move Eli again. He is not missing," Dean said. "He is behind that door. That is exactly why we move before they prepare." Damien remained silent. Caleb stepped closer. "Give me 6 hours. I can shut down every Kane warehouse from Cicero to the river." Avery looked at him. He had been at the restaurant when she mentioned the gray sedan. He had dismissed it. Now Eli was injured, and Caleb's first concern was not the child behind the door. It was retaliation. Dean said, "We have no proof Victor ordered this." The boy heard Kane's name. Avery spoke before she could decide whether it was wise. He heard what they wanted him to hear. Caleb turned. "This does not concern you." Avery pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "A child was left bleeding at my feet. That made it my concern. You do not understand what you heard. I understand that a kidnapper who wants to remain hidden does not announce the name of the man paying him." Caleb stared at her. Damien finally turned from the glass. "What are you saying?" Avery looked at him. "If Victor Kane ordered the kidnapping, why would his men make sure Eli remembered his name?" "To frighten him," Caleb said. "No, to deliver it." Caleb's jaw shifted. It lasted only a moment. Avery saw it. Damien saw Avery seeing it. Before either man answered, the treatment room doors opened. A doctor in navy scrubs approached. Mr. Cross Damien crossed the corridor. "How is he?" "He has a moderate concussion, 2 cracked ribs, severe bruising, and early hypothermia. We are monitoring possible internal bleeding, but the first scans are encouraging. His spine. No fracture." Avery released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Damien looked through the glass. "Will he recover?" "We expect him to, but the next several hours matter." "Can I see him?" "When we finish imaging." The doctor glanced toward Avery. "Who found him?" "She did," Damien said. "You kept him still." Avery nodded. "You may have prevented a much worse injury." The doctor returned to the treatment room. Damien stood near Avery. "Thank you." The words sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. Avery looked at the blood drying across his fingers. "Wash your hands." His expression hardened slightly. "Why?" "Because when Eli wakes up, he does not need to see his blood on you." Damien looked down. Then he walked to the restroom without argument. Dean approached Avery. "Tell me everything you saw." "I heard a trash can move. I found him beside the loading crates. No vehicle, no people, anything placed near him. 1 shoe was missing. Anything else?" "His coat was open. He was lying partly on his side." Dean frowned. "Did you move him that way?" "No." "You are sure?" "Yes." Dean looked toward the corridor. "That matters. Why, if they wanted him dead, they would not position him to breathe?" Caleb heard the exchange. "Or he fell that way." Avery looked at him. "Maybe." Again Caleb's gaze lingered too long. A nurse brought Avery dry socks and a hospital shirt. "There is a room down the hall where you can change." Avery stood. Damien returned with clean hands. He saw her preparing to leave. "Where are you going to change?" "You stay on this floor." Avery looked at him. "I am not your employee." "No. You are a witness known to the men who took my son. I have not told anyone what I saw. They knew your schedule. They knew you used the alley. They selected you before tonight." The words settled heavily between them. Avery thought of the gray sedan, the driver lifting the newspaper, Caleb asking whether she had an active imagination. "My mother is alone," she said. "Dean will send someone, no armed men outside her apartment. Whoever planned this knows your name. Then call the police." Caleb gave a quiet laugh. "The police cannot protect you from people like this." Avery looked directly at him. "You are people like this." The corridor went silent. Damien's expression did not change. "Yes," he said. His honesty unsettled her more than denial would have. "And because I know what they are capable of, you are not going home alone." Avery held his gaze. "You do not get to decide what happens to me because someone hurt your son. No. I decide because that same person may now hurt you. That still is not your decision." Damien stepped closer but stopped before entering her space. "Call your mother. Tell her whatever you need to tell her. Dean will place people near the building where she cannot see them." Avery almost refused again. Then she imagined the gray sedan outside Janet's apartment. She took out her phone. Janet answered on the fourth ring. "Are you at the pharmacy?" "Not yet." "You sound strange. One of the customers got sick. I am at the hospital." "Are you hurt?" "No." The lie caught in Avery's throat. "I may need to stay here for a while." "What kind of customer?" "A child." Janet was quiet. "Is he going to be all right?" "I think so." "And are you?" Avery looked through the glass at Eli. Damien stood beside the window watching her without pretending not to listen. "I do not know yet." Janet exhaled slowly. "Call me in the morning." "I will. I love you. I love you too." Avery ended the call. Damien removed his coat from the back of a chair and held it toward her. She looked at it. "I do not need another thing from you. You are shaking. I am wet. That is generally when people become cold. I have a blanket. You also have no coat." Avery looked at the black wool in his hands. "With men like you, a coat is rarely just a coat." His eyes remained on hers. "Then keep it until you decide what it means." She took it. The fabric was still warm. 2 hours later, Eli woke in a private room. Damien sat beside the bed. Avery remained near the door, uncertain whether she belonged inside. Eli saw her first. "You stayed." "Yes." His gaze moved to Damien's coat around her shoulders. "You gave her your coat." Damien looked at Avery. She was cold. Eli almost smiled. Then pain crossed his face. Damien leaned forward. "What do you remember?" Avery watched the boy's fingers tighten around the blanket. 3 voices. "Did you recognize any of them?" "No." "Anything else?" "One man smelled like gasoline." Dean wrote the detail down. "Another wore gloves," Eli continued. "Leather ones. And the man with the tattoo," Eli closed his eyes. He kept pulling his sleeve down. "Did he show his face?" "No." "Did anyone call him by name?" Eli shook his head. Then he looked at Avery. They knew she would be there. Avery moved closer. "What do you mean?" "One of them said the waitress leaves through the back after midnight." Damien slowly turned toward her. Avery felt the room grow smaller. "What else did they say?" Dean asked. "That she would find me." The words landed without sound. Caleb stood near the far wall. His face showed concern. Nothing more. Damien looked at Dean. "Secure Avery and her mother." Avery started to object, but Eli reached toward her. She took his hand. "They wanted me alive," he whispered. Damien's expression darkened. "Why do you think that one man said not to hit my head again?" Avery remembered how Eli had been placed on his side, how the missing shoe had been left closer to the alley entrance. How easily she had noticed the hand in the snow. She looked at Damien. They did not abandon him. Dean frowned. What? They arranged the scene. Caleb stepped forward. You are guessing. No. They knew when I left work. They knew I used the alley. They placed his shoe where I would see it. They left him breathing. Damien's gaze shifted toward the window. They wanted him found. Avery shook her head. They wanted him found by me. Later at Damien's lakefront safe house, Dean recovered video from a loading dock camera across the alley. The image was grainy, but it was enough. A gray van entered at 11:56. 3 men stepped out. They did not throw Eli onto the pavement. One checked his pulse. Another positioned him on his side and adjusted his coat around his neck. The third carried a shoe toward the alley entrance and placed it near the yellow light. They waited until the kitchen lights at the Marlowe went dark. Then they drove away. Avery watched the footage twice. On the third viewing, she pointed to the time. My manager locks the front door at 11:45. The kitchen staff leave before midnight. I leave between 12 and 12:10. Dean looked at her. How would they know that someone watched the restaurant? Damien stood behind her. They used you as insurance. Avery looked at the frozen image of Eli lying in the snow. No, they used me as a witness. She turned toward the men gathered around the screen. They needed someone outside your world to find him. Someone with no reason to lie. I was supposed to see his injuries, hear Victor Kane's name, and call you. Dean followed her reasoning. Damien attacks Kane before checking the story. Kane strikes back, Avery said. The city becomes a war zone. Damien's expression hardened. Whoever planned this knew exactly how I would react. Caleb stood near the doorway. Victor still benefits if Damien hesitates. Avery looked at him. Does he? Caleb's eyes narrowed. She continued. If Damien and Victor destroy each other, someone else benefits. Someone who controls the roads, the warehouses, the vehicles, and the weapons both sides would need. Silence spread through the room. Damien looked toward the dark water beyond the windows. Dean closed the laptop. Someone inside. Damien's jaw tightened. Pull the records of every man who knew Eli's route. Dean nodded. And every person with the broken crown tattoo, Damien added. Caleb remained perfectly still. Too still. Avery looked at the men surrounding Damien. Every one of them had arrived ready to kill an enemy outside the organization. None of them looked prepared to find that enemy standing in the same room. Damien let the silence remain. He had built his organization on the belief that silence revealed more than threats. Men rushed to fill empty space when they were afraid. They explained too much. They defended themselves before they had been accused. No one spoke. Dean stood beside the laptop with his arms folded. Caleb remained near the doorway, his face controlled. Avery watched them all. The safe house overlooked Lake Michigan from behind walls of glass stone and reinforced steel. Beyond the windows, the water had disappeared into darkness. Snow moved sideways through the lights around the property, striking the glass like handfuls of sand. Damien looked at Dean. How many people knew Eli's Route 7 with full access? 3 more could have seen part of the schedule. And the emergency code that pulled you away 6. Names. Dean opened a secure file. Caleb Shaw, Marcus Vale, Owen Grant, Aaron Pike, Samuel Cole, and me. Damien's eyes moved across the room. Caleb gave a small, bitter laugh. You cannot be serious. I have not accused you. You did not need to. Damien stepped toward him. If you are innocent, the truth protects you. Caleb held his gaze. That sounds comforting when the man saying it controls the truth. Dean shifted his weight, ready for violence. Avery expected Damien to react. He did not. Instead, he asked, Where were you when Eli was taken? My office. Alone. Yes. Convenient. I was reviewing freight contracts. Also convenient. Caleb's jaw tightened. I have served you for 13 years. I know. I stood beside you when men crossed the river to kill you. I buried people for this family. I built the roots that keep your businesses alive. Damien's voice lowered. And if you had nothing to do with this, you will continue doing so. Caleb looked toward Avery. This is because of her. Damien's expression went cold. No, this is because my son was found bleeding in the snow. Caleb opened his mouth, then stopped. Avery noticed his left hand, his thumb pressed against the inside of his cuff. Once, then again. The movement was small enough to miss. She had seen it at the restaurant when the gray sedan was mentioned. She said nothing, not yet. Damien ordered every senior member with access to Eli's schedule confined to a secured property until their movements could be verified. Caleb refused. You cannot lock down half your leadership while Kane moves against us. Kane did not move against us. You believe that because a waitress suggested it, Damien crossed the room in 2 steps. He did not raise his voice. That waitress kept my son alive. Choose your next words carefully. Caleb stared at him. For the first time, anger broke through his polished calm. Then he stepped back. Fine. Verify whatever you need. Dean escorted him from the room. The door closed. Avery released a breath. Damien looked at her. What did you see? She did not ask how he knew. Caleb touches his left cuff when he is uncomfortable. That is not evidence. No. Anything else he wanted Victor Kane blamed before Eli reached the hospital. He dismissed the sedan at the restaurant. He knew enough about transportation to understand how the abduction could happen. Damien looked toward the closed door. He also built half of what I own. That makes him useful. It makes him family. Avery met his eyes. Those are not always the same thing. His expression hardened not at her, but at the possibility that she might be right. Dean returned 20 minutes later with the first set of access logs. The records showed no obvious breach. Every code used during the abduction belonged to an authorized account. The false emergency call had passed through 2 internal systems before reaching Dean's phone. Someone had not broken into Damien's organization. Someone had used it exactly as designed. At 3 a.m, Damien ordered a meeting with Victor Kane. Dean objected immediately. You should not go. Then Kane assumes I am preparing an attack. He may be preparing one. That is why I am going. Dean looked toward Avery. She does not go anywhere near him, Damien answered before Avery could. She stays here. Avery folded her arms. No. Both men turned toward her. She continued. Eli heard Victor Kane's name. I found Eli. I saw the sedan. If Kane says something that does not fit, I may notice. Dean shook his head. This is not a restaurant table. Victor Kane has killed men for using the wrong tone. So has Damien. The room became still. Damien watched her. You are not coming into the meeting. Then place me somewhere I can hear it. Dean looked at him. This is a terrible idea. Damien remained silent for several seconds. Then he said, Prepare the observation room at Union Station. Dean exhaled through his nose. You already had one. I prepare for difficult conversations. Avery looked at him. You mean ambushes? I mean both. Union Station stood almost empty at that hour. Snow pressed against the tall windows while the last cleaning crews moved through distant corridors. Damien controlled a private dining room above the old concourse through one of his hospitality companies. The public knew it as a place for political dinners and corporate events. The walls hid reinforced panels, concealed cameras, and 2 escape passages. Avery sat in a narrow room behind dark glass. Dean stood beside her with a listening device in his ear. On the other side, Damien waited alone at a long table. Victor Kane entered with 2 men. He was older than Damien, with silver hair and a calm face lined by years of suspicion. He wore no visible weapon. That meant nothing. Victor sat across from Damien. "I heard your son was found." Damien did not thank him. "You heard quickly. Chicago speaks quickly when you close half its roads. I closed what I needed. You frightened 3 judges, a state senator, and several men who pay me for discretion. My son was taken." Victor's expression changed slightly. Not sympathy. Recognition. He had children of his own. "So I heard." "He heard your name." Victor leaned back. "Then whoever took him wanted you sitting where you are now. You deny involvement." "I do." "You expect me to believe that?" "No. I expect you to verify it." Victor placed a folder on the table. Damien did not touch it. "What is this? Phone records? Toll cameras? Funeral photographs? Every senior member of my crew was in Joliet yesterday burying my sister. Records can be altered?" "Yes." "Photographs can be staged?" "Yes." Victor folded his hands. "But staging a funeral attended by 200 people would be excessive even for me." Avery watched him through the glass. His eyes did not avoid Eli's name. He did not rush to distance himself from violence. He simply denied this specific act. Damien opened the folder. Inside were time-stamped photographs, hotel receipts, location records, and a copy of an obituary. Victor said, "My sister died on Monday. Cancer." Damien's fingers stopped on the page. Victor noticed. "Your wife had leukemia." Damien's gaze rose. "Do not speak about her. I am telling you why I did not touch your boy. You think grief makes you honorable? No. I think it makes some lines visible." Damien closed the folder. "Your organization has been moving trucks through my southern corridor. Legal cargo. On paper." Victor smiled faintly. "Most things are legal on paper. Did one of your men order surveillance on the Marlowe number? Did one of your men know Avery Brooks's schedule?" Victor's eyes shifted toward the mirrored wall. Avery felt the movement as though he had looked directly at her. "I assume Avery Brooks is the waitress?" he said. Damien did not answer. Victor continued. "You brought her here. That is not your concern. It becomes my concern if you are using her accusation to justify war. She did not accuse you. Then she is smarter than the men surrounding you." Dean looked at Avery. She kept her attention on Victor. Damien said, "Explain." Victor removed a small flash drive from his pocket and placed it beside the folder. "For the last 3 years, someone has been buying independent trucking companies across Illinois and Indiana. Small firms. Debt-heavy, easy to control. Who shell companies hide the name? Then why bring it to me? Because every purchase occurred near a route your organization would need if our southern corridor closed." Damien's expression did not change. Victor leaned forward. "If you attack me, I shut the South. If I retaliate, you shut the river. Both of us lose warehouses, drivers, and fuel contracts, and someone sells them back to us, at a price we cannot refuse." Damien looked at the flash drive, whose routes Victor's eyes remained steady. "Ask the man who manages your freight." In the observation room, Dean became very still. Avery felt the cold settle deeper into the walls. Damien did not move for several seconds. Then he asked, "Why tell me?" Victor smiled without warmth. "Because a war with you would cost me sons money and territory. I prefer enemies who calculate. Grieving fathers rarely do." The words struck hard. Damien's hand tightened around the edge of the folder. Victor added, Whoever hurt your boy expected you to become exactly what they needed. Damien stood. The meeting was over. Victor remained seated. For what it is worth, Damien, I would have killed the men who did it. Damien looked down at him. That is why they chose your name. Back at the safe house, Dean began verifying Victor's records. Avery found Damien alone in the kitchen. The room was dark except for the light above the stove. He stood at the counter preparing coffee he did not appear interested in drinking. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms. His tie was gone. Exhaustion had stripped away some of the distance he wore like armor. Avery entered quietly. You believe Victor? I believe the evidence may support him. That was not my question. Damien poured the coffee. I do not believe anyone. That sounds lonely. It is efficient. She sat at the island. Eli does not think so. Damien stopped with the cup halfway to his mouth. Avery regretted the sentence only because it was true enough to hurt. He set the cup down. You have known my son for less than a day. I know he watches other children because he wants what they have. He has everything he needs. He has everything you can purchase. Damien's face closed. You think I do not understand my own child. I think you understand danger better than you understand loneliness. The lake wind struck the windows. For a moment, the entire house seemed to listen. Damien turned away from her. When Eli was 6, his mother collapsed in our kitchen. Avery said nothing. He looked at the coffee. She had been sick for 2 years. Leukemia. The treatment stopped working, then started again, then stopped for good. His voice remained controlled, but the control had become effort. She was holding a glass. It shattered when she fell. Eli was in the room. Avery remembered the tray crashing at the Marlowe. Eli covering his head. His breath disappearing. He connects sudden noises with losing her, she said. Yes. Does he know that... He knows she died. That was not what I asked. Damien looked at her. Avery continued gently. Does he know his body remembers that moment I do not speak to him about it? Why? What would that accomplish? He might stop believing something is wrong with him. Damien's expression tightened. Fear invites mistakes. No. Hidden fear does. You speak as though fear has never controlled you. Avery looked toward her phone on the counter. 3 missed calls from Janet. She had sent a message saying she was safe, but she had not explained where she was. It controls me every day. Damien waited. Avery looked down at her hands. When my mother became sick, I started counting everything. Pills, dollars, hours of sleep, days until rent. I thought if I kept the numbers straight, nothing could surprise me. Did it work? No. She gave a quiet laugh with no humor in it. I left nursing school because we needed money. I told myself it was temporary. Then every month created another reason not to return. Damien leaned against the counter. How far did you get? Almost 2 years? You were good. It was not a question. Avery thought of instructors praising her steady hands. I could have been. You still can. She looked at him. You say that because options appear when you want them. They can appear for you. There it was. The offer she had expected. Damien spoke carefully. I can cover your mother's treatment. Avery stood. No, you have not heard the details. I do not need them. There would be no conditions. With men like you, conditions often arrive after the help. His eyes hardened. I do not buy people. You command them. Is that better? I am trying to keep your mother alive. No. You are trying to solve something because you cannot tolerate being unable to control it. The words landed between them. Damien stepped closer. Avery held her ground. He stopped before touching distance. You think you understand me. I think you are offering money because gratitude is easier for you than trust. His voice lowered. And what is trust to you? Letting another person decide. That may be more difficult. Then practice. The space between them changed. Danger remained, but it was no longer the only thing there. Damien looked at her face, then at the loose strand of hair near her cheek. His hand lifted slightly. He stopped. May I, Avery's breath caught. No one had prepared her for the question. He could command rooms, men, roads, entire businesses. Yet here in the dark kitchen he waited for permission to touch one strand of hair. Avery did not answer. Damien lowered his hand. The restraint unsettled her more deeply than contact would have. Dean entered before either of them spoke again. We verified Victor's records. Damien stepped away. And the funeral is real. His senior crew was there. Could he have used contractors? Yes, but there is more. Dean placed a tablet on the counter. The shell companies Victor identified connect through 4 financial layers. The final holding company purchased 3 trucking firms last year. Who signed the internal transport approvals, Caleb? Damien looked at the screen. Avery watched the muscles in his jaw tighten. Dean continued. It does not prove he owns the companies. The signatures may be routine. Then we create proof, Avery said. Both men looked at her. She pulled the tablet closer. You have 6 people who knew Dean's emergency code. Give each one a different piece of false information. Dean understood first. A controlled leak. Tell each man that Damien is moving a retaliatory convoy through a different route. Then watch which route gets attention. Damien looked at her. You learned that in nursing school, Gnome. I learned it serving married men who gave different lies to their wives and girlfriends. Dean almost smiled. Damien did not, but something warmer entered his eyes. They prepared 6 false convoy routes. Each senior member received one route through a separate, secure message. Marcus Vale was told the convoy would leave through the northern rail yard. Owen Grant received a route along the river. Samuel Cole received a route through Cicero. Aaron Pike was given the old stockyard road. Caleb received an abandoned freight tunnel beneath the western warehouses. Dean kept the 6th route for himself. Only Damien, Dean, and Avery knew the full test. They waited. By late afternoon, nothing had happened. Avery sat near Eli's room while he slept. His face had regained some color, but bruises darkened along his jaw and neck. A bandage covered his temple. Damien had doubled the guards inside the hallway. Every time a radio crackled, Eli's eyes opened. Every time Boots passed the door, he looked toward the handle. Avery noticed before Damien did. She stepped into the hallway. Move the 2 men near the bedroom. The guards looked at Damien. He had just arrived carrying a tray of food Eli had not requested. They stay, he said. He cannot sleep. He is safe. He does not feel safe. Damien placed the tray on a table. Someone took him from his own home, and now you have turned this house into a prison. His eyes sharpened. You are overstepping. Then tell me to leave. The words stopped him. Avery lowered her voice. He hears every radio. He watches every door. He cannot breathe without seeing someone carrying a gun. The guns are there to protect him. His body does not know that. Damien looked through the open doorway. Eli lay still beneath the blanket, but his eyes were open. You do not understand what it is to know someone is hunting your child, Damien said. Avery met his gaze. And you do not understand what it is like to be the child everyone is hunting. A small voice came from the room. She understands better than you. Damien turned. Eli was looking at him. The words struck more deeply than anger could have. Damien dismissed the guards from the hallway. Dean moved them to the stairwell. That night, Damien sat on the floor beside Eli's bed. Avery remained outside the room, close enough to hear but not to intrude. Eli stared at the ceiling. Damien rested his arms on his knees. You should sleep. I cannot. Do you want the light on? It does not matter. Damien searched for an answer that did not sound like an order. He found none. Eli spoke first. Were you afraid when Mom died? Damien looked toward him. Yes. You did not act afraid. I thought if you saw it you would feel less safe. I felt alone. Damien's face changed. He looked down at his hands. I was trying to keep you from losing anyone else. You stopped letting me go anywhere. I thought that was protection. It felt like punishment. Damien's voice grew rough. I did not realize you were losing me too. Eli turned his head. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Eli reached one hand over the edge of the bed. Damien took it. Avery walked away before the moment became something she had no right to witness. At 11 that night, Victor Kane contacted Dean. An unknown armed crew had entered the abandoned freight tunnel beneath the western warehouses. The route assigned only to Caleb. Dean showed Damien the photographs. Men in tactical clothing waited behind concrete pillars. 2 vehicles stood nearby with false license plates. They had prepared to intercept a convoy that did not exist. Damien stared at the images. Bring Caleb in. Quietly, no. The gathering took place in a private warehouse beside the Chicago River. 12 men carried the broken crown tattoo. Each had earned the mark through years of service violence or sacrifice. Some had protected Damien when he was young. Others had helped him take control of the organization after his father died. They entered one by one. Phones were collected at the door. Weapons remained, but magazines were removed. Avery stood with Dean behind one-way glass above the warehouse floor. She could see every face. Below them, Damien stood at the head of a long table. Caleb sat 3 seats to his right. Aaron Pike sat near the far end. His left hand was wrapped in a bandage. Damien waited until the final door closed. My son was taken using our vehicles, our security codes, and our routes. No one moved. One of the men involved carries the broken crown. Anger traveled around the table. Marcus Vale struck his palm against the wood. Give us a name. If I had one, you would not be sitting here. Caleb leaned back. This is Kane's work. Damien looked at him. Victor Kane was not involved. Several men reacted. Caleb did not. He merely pressed his thumb against the inside of his left cuff. Avery leaned closer to the glass. There, she whispered. Dean followed her gaze. Damien continued. Someone wanted war. Someone expected grief to make me careless. Aaron Pike swallowed. The movement was visible even from above. Damien walked slowly behind the chairs. I gave 6 men 6 different routes. Caleb's eyes shifted toward Marcus, then Owen, then back to Damien. The western freight tunnel was compromised. Every man at the table knew what that meant. Caleb did not react quickly enough. His face remained calm, too calm. Aaron looked at him, only for a second. Then he stared down. Avery said, Aaron is afraid of Caleb. Dean watched. How do you know? He checks Caleb before every response. Below them, Damien stopped behind Aaron. Where were you when Eli was taken at home? Alone with my brother. Your brother says you left at 10:30. Aaron's face lost color. He is confused. About what time you left? He drinks. Damien placed both hands on the back of Aaron's chair. Did Eli bite you? Aaron's bandaged hand tightened. Caleb remained still. Avery remembered Eli saying he had fought inside the vehicle. She looked at Aaron's mouth. One side of his lower lip was swollen. He was hit in the face, she said. Dean spoke into Damien's earpiece. Check Pike's hand and mouth. Damien straightened. Remove the bandage. Aaron did not move. Marcus reached for him. Aaron knocked the chair backward and ran. He reached the side door before 2 guards forced him to the floor. The bandage tore away. Deep bite marks curved across the base of his thumb. Damien crouched beside him. Who ordered it? Aaron's face pressed against the concrete. No one. Damien took his injured hand. Aaron cried out. Who ordered you to take my son? Aaron looked across the warehouse. His gaze found Caleb, then dropped. He will kill my family. Caleb's voice remained calm. He is panicking. He does not know what he is saying. Damien looked at Dean through the observation window, though he could not see him. Dean spoke through the earpiece. Aaron's family is already secured. Damien returned his attention to Aaron. Your mother and sister are safe. Aaron stared at him. You are lying. I do not need to. Aaron began to shake. Caleb pressed his thumb against his cuff again. The warehouse lights went out. Gunfire erupted outside. Men shouted. Chairs overturned. Dean pulled Avery away from the glass as bullets struck the outer wall. Emergency lights flashed red. The backup generator engaged. The warehouse floor returned in broken pieces of crimson light and shadow. Caleb's chair was empty. A side door hung open. On the concrete near his place at the table lay a phone. Its screen displayed a video feed. Janet Brooks walked out of her apartment carrying a grocery bag. A man followed 20 feet behind her. A message appeared beneath the image. Bring Avery to Pier 19 or her mother dies before sunrise. The message glowed against the cracked screen. For one breath, Avery could not move. The warehouse around her filled with voices, boots, and the sharp mechanical sound of weapons being loaded. Red emergency lights flashed against the concrete. Men rushed through the side door Caleb had used, but Dean called them back before they disappeared into the snow. No one follows without a route, he shouted. That is what he wants. Avery stared at the image of her mother. Janet walked slowly beneath the streetlights, one hand gripping a grocery bag against her coat. The man behind her kept a careful distance. He looked ordinary. That was what frightened Avery most. Damien picked up the phone. The video continued for 8 seconds before freezing. Avery reached for it. Give it to me. Damien held the screen beyond her hand. You are not going anywhere near Pier 19. That is my mother. That is exactly why you are staying here. Avery looked at him. You do not get to lock me in a room while someone decides whether she lives. I can protect her. You could not protect Eli. The word struck him. Avery saw it in the sudden stillness of his face. She regretted the cruelty, but not the truth. Damien stepped closer. Caleb knows you are the only thing that can force me to make a mistake. No. He thinks I am. He is right. The admission passed between them with no softness. Avery looked away first. Dean took the phone and enlarged the image. We need to determine whether this is live. Avery focused on the screen. Janet passed a darkened store window. A round clock hung inside above a display of winter coats. Stop there. Dean froze the frame. Avery leaned closer. The clock says 12:16. Dean checked his watch. 12:30. The video is 14 minutes old. Damien looked at the frozen image. So he moved her before sending it. Yes. Dean studied the background. There is an elevated train line behind the building. Avery listened to the last seconds of audio. A deep, metallic squeal passed over Janet's footsteps. Then a low rumble. Train brakes. Avery closed her eyes and replayed the sound in her mind. Her mother had lived in Chicago for 30 years. If she knew someone was listening, she would leave a clue. Avery took out her phone and called. It rang 5 times. Janet answered. Avery. Her voice sounded controlled. Too controlled. Avery forced herself to speak casually. Hi, Mom. I wanted to check the weather. Silence. They had created the question years earlier after Janet fainted at a bus stop and became afraid to admit when she felt unwell. Weather meant danger. A simple answer meant she was alone. A detailed answer meant someone was listening. Janet understood. "It is cold," she said. "Very cold. The trains are loud tonight and someone nearby is baking bread." Avery closed her eyes. "Can you see any snow?" "Only through a dirty window." "Are you sitting down?" "Yes." "Are you hurt?" A pause. "No." A male voice said something in the background. Janet continued quickly. "I should go. Mom, I love you." The line ended. Avery looked at Dean. "Train brakes and bread." Dean moved to a digital city map on the wall. Several bakeries operate near elevated tracks. "Not at midnight," Avery said. Damien understood. Commercial baking district. Dean marked 3 areas. One near Fulton Market, one west of the river, one near the old freight yards. Avery looked at the 3rd location. Caleb controls storage property there. Dean enlarged the map. A warehouse registered to one of Damien's holding companies stood 2 blocks from an industrial bakery and less than 50 yards from the elevated rail line. Damien's face hardened. "He is using my building." Dean began issuing orders. 2 teams to the freight district. No sirens, no cross vehicles. Approach from the south. Avery turned toward Damien. "And Pier 19. We go there." Dean looked at him. "You mean your team goes there?" Damien did not answer. Avery stepped between them. "I am going too." "No," Damien said. "Caleb asked for me. That does not mean he receives you. He will expect to see me. He can expect anything he wants. If you arrive without me, he knows we found the warehouse. He contacts the men holding my mother, and they kill her." Damien's voice lowered. "You are not bait. I am not asking to be. That is exactly what you are asking." Avery took the phone from Dean and pointed to the frozen image. "He selected me before he selected the alley. He studied my schedule. He knew my mother was sick. He knew how much money I owed. He thought that meant I could be controlled." Damien watched her. Avery continued. "He built this entire plan around what he thinks I will do. Let him keep believing he understands me." Dean looked between them. "She has a point." Damien turned on him. "She is not trained. She notices what trained men miss. That does not make her bulletproof." Avery held Damien's gaze. "No one here is." For several seconds, the only sound came from the generator beneath the warehouse floor. Damien looked toward the message again. Then he spoke to Dean. "Prepare a wire." Dean nodded. Damien added, "And a tracker." Avery shook her head. "No tracker." His expression hardened. "That is not negotiable. It is if Caleb checks me. He may not. He will." Damien stepped closer. "You are walking into a warehouse with a man who kidnapped my son and threatened your mother. I am not sending you in without knowing where you are. Then hide it somewhere he will not check." Dean removed a small emergency transmitter from his equipment case. It was no larger than a shirt button. "This sends a signal when pressed. No continuous location. Caleb will not detect it unless he searches for active transmission." Damien took it. He placed it in Avery's palm. "If you press this, we enter. And if I do not, we wait." Avery looked at him. "You will actually wait." Every instinct in his face answered before he did. "No." "Then why give me the choice?" "Because I am trying." The honesty disarmed her. Avery closed her fingers around the transmitter. "Try harder." Damien gave her a concealed microphone, then helped attach it inside the seam of her coat. His hands remained careful and distant. He did not touch more than necessary. When he finished, his fingers paused near the collar. "If something happens to you," he said. Avery looked up. Do not make me responsible for your fear. His jaw tightened. She softened her voice. Use it. Do not let it use you. He stepped back. At 12:52, 2 vehicles left the warehouse through separate exits. Dean led the rescue team toward the freight district. Damien drove Avery to Pier 19 in a plain black sedan with no security convoy behind them. The streets near the lake were nearly empty. Snow drifted across the asphalt in long, pale lines. Chicago's towers rose behind them, their windows glittering above the storm. Avery sat with both hands in her lap. Her fingers would not stop trembling. Damien noticed. You do not have to prove anything. I am not. You are afraid. Yes. He glanced at her. Most people lied to him about fear. Avery never did. Good, he said. She turned toward him. That is the second time you have called fear good. It means you understand the danger. I understood it when I found Eli. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. After several blocks, he spoke again. Your mother will be recovered. You cannot promise that. No. The word came reluctantly. Avery looked through the windshield. Then do not. He nodded once. Pier 19 stood near the edge of the river where old industrial buildings met newer development. The warehouse had been abandoned for years, but the loading cranes still rose above it like black skeletons. Damien stopped the car beneath a dead security light. Avery reached for the door. He caught her wrist, not hard, enough to stop her. She looked at his hand. He released her immediately. Caleb will try to make you doubt me. He does not need to try. Damien accepted the blow. He will also tell you that I cannot protect the people near me. Avery thought of Eli's bruised face, Janet's voice on the phone, Laura collapsing in a kitchen filled with broken glass. Can you? Damien looked toward the warehouse. No. The answer surprised her. He continued. I can reduce risk. I can punish people who create it. I can build walls and hire men and close roads. None of that makes anyone untouchable. Then why do you act as if control can save everyone? Because the alternative is admitting I may lose them. Avery stared at him. The snow tapped softly against the windshield. Damien placed the transmitter in the inside pocket of her coat. I will be near the east entrance. Dean has 2 men on the roof. Press it when you want us inside. Avery opened the door. Not when you want. When you want, he said. She stepped into the snow. The warehouse door stood open. One light burned inside. Avery entered alone. The interior smelled of river water oil and rusted metal. Shipping containers formed narrow corridors across the concrete floor. Old chains hung from a track in the ceiling. A cargo hook swayed slightly in the draft. Caleb waited beneath a hanging lamp. 3 armed men stood around him. Aaron Pike knelt beside a container with his wrists bound. Blood covered one side of his face. Caleb looked past Avery toward the door. Damien stayed outside. Yes, he always did underestimate you. Avery removed her gloves slowly. Where is my mother safe? That word means very little from you. Caleb smiled. You sounded stronger at the Marlowe. I was carrying a tray then, and now I know what you are. His smile disappeared. Avery looked at Aaron. What happened to him? He became unreliable. Aaron lifted his head. He was going to kill my family. Caleb turned the gun toward him. I was protecting your family from your stupidity. Aaron laughed weakly. You do not protect anyone. Caleb struck him across the face with the weapon. Avery forced herself not to react. Every sound reached Damien through the microphone. She needed Caleb talking. You planned all of it, she said. Caleb faced her again. The kidnapping. The sedan, my work schedule, the alley. I planned enough. Why leave Eli alive? Caleb's expression showed irritation, as if the answer should have been obvious. Because a dead child starts a different kind of war. What kind? The kind no one controls. Avery moved a few steps closer. You thought you could control Damien's grief. I have controlled it for years. The statement was not pride. It was resentment. Caleb walked toward a table where maps and financial records had been spread across the surface. After Laura died, Damien changed. He stopped expanding. He rejected profitable routes. He invested in restaurants and hospitals as though legitimate business could wash blood from his hands. He wanted a different life for Eli. He wanted softness. Caleb touched one of the maps. An organization like ours does not survive softness. Yours? His eyes lifted. It should have been. There it was. Not loyalty corrupted by desperation. Ownership denied. Caleb continued. I built the freight network. I negotiated with the unions. I moved men and weapons when Damien was still learning how to look dangerous in a suit. And he became the leader, because his father gave him the name. You stayed. I believed he would earn it. Avery glanced at the maps. Different routes connected warehouses, fuel depots, trucking firms, and river access points. Victor Kane had been right. Caleb had been building an empire beneath Damien's. You bought the independent transport companies. Caleb looked pleased that she understood. Through people Damien never bothered to notice. You wanted him to attack Victor. I wanted both men to behave exactly as men like them always behave. Destroy everything over pride, over blood. Caleb walked closer. If Damien struck first, Kane would close the southern routes. Damien would shut the river. Both sides would lose access to drivers' storage and fuel. And they would need you. They would need my companies. You would sell weapons to both sides. I would sell survival. Avery looked at Aaron. And when they were weak, Caleb smiled again. I would offer order. You mean control. They are the same thing. No. His face hardened. Avery continued. Control is what frightened men call order when they want everyone else to stop choosing. Caleb moved so quickly she almost stepped back. He stopped inches from her. You think Damien is different? No. The answer surprised him. Avery held his gaze. But he knows he might be wrong. Caleb laughed. You believe that because he asked permission before touching you? Her stomach tightened. He had watched more than the restaurant. Caleb saw her reaction. I know everything that happens in Damien's houses. Not anymore. You think one emotional conversation changed him? I think you are angry because he changed without asking your permission. Caleb's jaw tightened. Avery had found the wound. She pressed it. You needed him grieving. You needed him violent. You needed him alone because that was the only version of Damien you knew how to control. Caleb raised the gun. The barrel stopped beneath her chin. You should be careful. Avery's pulse hammered. She kept her voice steady. Why? Because you might hurt another unarmed person. Aaron lowered his head, trying to hide a smile. Caleb pressed the weapon harder against Avery's skin. You were supposed to be useful. I was. Do you know why I selected you? Avery did not answer. Caleb lowered the gun and walked away. You were perfect. He began counting on his fingers. A waitress with debt, a sick mother, a predictable schedule, former medical training. Avery felt cold spread through her. You knew about nursing school. I knew what you owed the college. I knew how many payments you had missed. I knew your mother's diagnosis and the name of her pharmacy. The violation felt physical. Caleb had taken the private pieces of her life and arranged them like objects on a table. You chose me because I could keep Eli alive. I chose you because Damien would believe you. You could not know I would find him in time. The kitchen lights told us when you were leaving. One of my men waited until you entered the alley. Avery remembered the trash can scraping against brick. The sound had not been an accident. Someone had moved it to draw her attention. Caleb continued. You had enough training to protect his spine and keep him conscious. You were independent enough to argue with Damien. That made you credible. You investigated my debts and still learned nothing about me. His eyes narrowed. I learned enough. You learned what I owe. You never learned what I refused to sell. Caleb raised his weapon again. A side door opened. Damien entered with empty hands raised. Two of Caleb's men immediately aimed at him. You were told to stay outside, Caleb said. You were told many things over 13 years. Damien's voice was calm. You stopped listening. Caleb motioned toward Avery. Stand beside her. Damien did. Avery could feel the tension in him contained behind every controlled breath. Caleb held out his hand. The access codes. To what the freight systems, the river storage accounts, emergency routes, every contract tied to cross-transport. Damien looked at the maps. You already own the companies. I own shells. I need your network. You kidnapped my son for passwords. I kidnapped your son for a city. Damien's face did not move. Caleb stepped closer. You would have given it to me without knowing. You overestimated yourself. No, I underestimated her. He looked at Avery with open dislike. She made you hesitate. Damien said nothing. She stood in front of you in an alley and told you not to touch your own child. You obeyed. I listened. Caleb smiled. That is a gentle word for weakness. He placed the gun against Avery's ribs. The codes. Damien gave him the first sequence. Caleb entered it into a tablet. The screen accepted it. Avery looked at Damien. He did not meet her eyes. Caleb asked for the second code. Damien gave it. Avery understood. He was surrendering access. Not stalling. Not lying. He was handing Caleb the network he had spent years building. For her. Caleb saw the realization in her face. This is why he should not lead. He entered the second sequence. First Laura, then Eli, now a waitress. Damien looked at him. Caring about people is not what made me weak. Caleb waited. Trusting you did. Avery's hand moved inside her coat. Her fingers found the transmitter. Caleb saw the motion. He turned the gun toward her. She pressed the button. The east entrance burst inward. Dean's men entered through smoke and shattered metal. Gunfire tore across the warehouse. Avery dropped behind a concrete barrier. Damien pulled her down as bullets struck the container behind them. Aaron remained exposed near the center aisle. One of Caleb's men raised his weapon toward him. Avery saw the loose chain hanging from the ceiling track. She grabbed it and pulled with both hands. The chain moved through an old pulley. A cargo brace swung across the aisle, striking the gunman in the shoulder and knocking his weapon aside. Aaron rolled behind the container. Damien fired twice from a weapon Dean slid across the floor. One of Caleb's men fell. Another retreated between the shipping containers. The warehouse filled with smoke echoes and sparks from damaged lights. Avery crawled toward Aaron. Damien caught her arm. Stay here. He will be killed. He helped take Eli. He can still testify. Damien looked toward Aaron. Then he released her. Avery reached him and cut the binding around his wrists with a sharp piece of metal. Aaron looked at her in disbelief. Why are you helping me? I am helping the truth. A shot struck the concrete near her hand. Damien returned fire. Caleb disappeared behind the eastern containers. Dean shouted through the smoke. Shaw is moving toward the loading platform. Damien rose to follow. Avery looked upward. The damaged cargo track shook above them. A steel hook had come loose and swung from a frayed cable. Damien! He did not hear her. The cable snapped. The hook dropped toward Avery. Damien turned. Caleb appeared at the far end of the aisle. Damien had a clear shot. He looked from Caleb to Avery. Then he threw himself toward her. They hit the floor as the hook crashed into the concrete where she had been kneeling. Caleb vanished through a service door. For several seconds, Avery could hear only the ringing in her ears. Damien was above her, one hand protecting the back of her head. "Are you hurt?" "No." He searched her face. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Avery looked toward the service door. "You let him go." Damien rose and pulled her to her feet. "I chose." The sentence carried more than the moment. Dean reached them. "Caleb is heading for the east platform. 2 men are cutting him off. They will not reach it in time," Avery said. Dean looked at her. "How do you know?" She pictured Eli's sketchbook. The drawing of Pier 19 had shown more than cranes and containers. Eli had drawn the building from above during a visit with Damien. He had included a narrow staircase behind the eastern storage line. "There is a service stair behind the 3rd row of containers," Damien remembered. "It leads directly to the platform." Dean spoke into his radio. "Team 2, take the rear stair. Block the river exit." Damien moved through the smoke. Avery followed. He turned. "Stay with Dean." "No, this is not an argument. You said you were practicing." His face showed frustration, then acceptance. "Stay behind me." They reached the loading platform as Caleb emerged from the service stair. 2 of Dean's men blocked the river entrance. Caleb turned and found Damien standing between him and the warehouse. Snow blew through the open loading bay. The river moved black beneath the platform. Caleb had lost his gun. He pulled a knife from inside his coat. Damien placed his weapon on the floor. Avery looked at him. "What are you doing?" Damien never took his eyes from Caleb. Ending the part he understands. Caleb attacked. The fight was fast and ugly. No polished movements, no dramatic pauses. Caleb drove the knife toward Damien's ribs. Damien caught his wrist and struck him across the jaw. They crashed against a steel railing. Caleb hit Damien in the injured side. Damien staggered. Caleb raised the knife again. Damien trapped his arm, twisted, and forced the blade from his hand. It skidded across the platform and stopped near Avery's feet. Caleb drove his shoulder into Damien's chest. They fell against the railing. For one terrifying second, both men leaned over the river. Damien recovered first. He pulled Caleb backward and struck him to the ground. Caleb reached for the knife. Avery kicked it beyond his hand. Damien forced him onto his knees. Dean's men raised their weapons. Caleb was bleeding from his mouth, but he laughed. "Kill me." Damien tightened his grip. "You would like that. You think putting me in a cell makes you merciful? No. Then do it." Damien looked toward Avery. She said nothing. The decision belonged to him. Caleb smiled through the blood. "Kill me, and everyone knows I frightened you." Damien released his collar. Caleb almost fell. "Collect every file," Damien said to Dean. "Every account, every recording, every name connected to his companies." Caleb stared at him. Damien continued. "You wanted my city." He stepped back. "Now you can watch it continue without you." Dean secured Caleb's wrists. For the first time, Caleb looked afraid. Not of death, of becoming irrelevant. Avery returned to the warehouse with Damien. Aaron sat against a container while a medic bandaged his arm. He looked at Damien. "My family. Safe," Damien said. Aaron closed his eyes. "You will testify to everything." Aaron nodded. "The drivers, the surveillance team, the payment accounts, all of it. Names. I will give you every name." Damien stood over him. "If you lie once the agreement ends." Aaron looked toward Avery. "She saved me." Damien followed his gaze. "Yes." At 2:14 in the morning, Dean called from the freight district. "We found Janet." Avery stopped breathing. "Is she hurt?" Dean put the call on speaker. A tired voice answered. "Avery, Mom." "I am fine." Avery covered her mouth. Janet continued. "They tied me to a chair, but one of them had no idea how to tie knots." Her attempt at humor broke the tension inside Avery's chest. "I am coming. You always say that. This time I mean it." When Avery reached the warehouse near the bakery district, Janet stood beneath an ambulance light wrapped in a gray blanket. Avery ran to her. Janet raised one hand and slapped her lightly across the cheek. Then she pulled her into an embrace. "You told me you were covering an emergency shift." Avery laughed and cried at the same time. It became complicated. Janet looked over her shoulder. Armed men surrounded the loading area. Damien stood several steps away, blood darkening his shirt near the ribs. "I can see that." Janet held Avery at arm's length. "Are you hurt? No? Is that your coat?" Avery looked down at Damien's black coat around her shoulders. "No." Janet followed her gaze. Damien approached but stopped at a respectful distance. Janet studied him from head to toe. "You are Damien Cross." "Yes." "You are the reason my daughter is in danger." "Yes." "And are you also the reason she is alive?" Avery wiped her face. "Partly." Janet looked at Damien again. "I have not decided whether to thank you or hate you." "That seems fair." Janet glanced at the blood on his shirt. "You should have that examined. I have had worse." "That is what stubborn men say shortly before collapsing." Avery looked at her mother. "You like him already." "I said no such thing." Damien almost smiled. By sunrise, Aaron had given Dean the names of everyone involved in Eli's abduction. 2 men had watched the Marlowe. One had triggered the false warehouse alarm. Another had moved the gray sedan between surveillance points. Caleb had selected the alley, studied Avery's schedule, and ordered Eli left alive. He had also created shell companies tied to weapons, stolen vehicles, bribery, and several unsolved disappearances. Damien could have buried the evidence. Instead, copies were delivered anonymously to federal investigators, state police, and 2 journalists known for refusing private payments. The records connected Caleb to crimes beyond Damien's organization. They also made him impossible to recover quietly. Victor Kane accepted a ceasefire before noon. The southern routes reopened. No retaliatory convoy moved through Chicago. The war Caleb had designed ended before the first territory was taken. Later that evening, Avery found Damien standing outside Eli's hospital room. His ribs had been wrapped. A cut marked his cheek. He looked exhausted. Through the window, Eli slept with Janet sitting beside the bed. The 2 had met only an hour earlier. Janet had already convinced him to eat half a bowl of soup. Avery stopped beside Damien. "What happens to Caleb?" "He remains alive." "That was not what I asked." "No." Avery looked at him. "I will not build a life beside secrets that can swallow me." Damien's face became unreadable. "Are you building a life beside me I do not know?" The truth hurt more than either answer might have. Avery continued, "There are things you do that I may never accept. I know. There are things you have done that I may never forgive. I know. I will not ask you to become someone else because I am standing here." Damien looked through the glass at Eli. "There are parts of me you may never be able to live with. Acceptance is not the same as ignorance." He turned toward her. "What are you asking? Do not lie to me because you think the truth will make me leave. And if it does, then I leave knowing the truth." His expression tightened. Every instinct he possessed told him to hold tighter. Avery could see the struggle. Finally he said, "I will not lie to you." It was not a romantic promise. It was more dangerous than one. A doctor entered Eli's room and asked Avery to join him in the corridor. Dr. Naomi Wells had reviewed Janet's latest scans after hearing about her condition during the hospital intake. Her expression was careful. The delay in treatment has narrowed some options. Avery felt Janet move beside her. How narrow? Janet asked. There is a clinical program at Lakeside Women's Cancer Institute. The treatment is aggressive and acceptance is limited. Would it help? It could. Avery heard the uncertainty. Not a miracle. Not a guarantee. A chance. What does it cost? She asked. The doctor hesitated. More than most families can manage without assistance. Avery looked through the hospital window at the snow falling over Chicago. Behind her stood a man who could open almost any door in the city. Beside her stood the woman who had taught her never to confuse help with ownership. Damien did not speak. He did not offer money. He waited for Avery to decide what question came next. Avery looked at Dr. Wells. What would the treatment involve? The doctor opened Janet's chart. Several rounds of targeted chemotherapy combined with an experimental immune therapy. The first month would be difficult. There would be frequent blood tests, scans, and possible hospital stays. Possible, Janet asked. Likely. Janet folded her hands in her lap. And the chances? Dr. Wells paused before answering. The program is not a cure. I need to be honest about that. But patients with similar results have responded well enough to gain time and in some cases reach remission. Avery felt the word enter the room. Remission. It was not a promise. It was a door left slightly open. What happens if she is accepted? Avery asked. The medical board reviews her case. If they approve it, treatment could begin within 2 weeks. And the cost? Dr. Wells looked toward Damien, then back to Avery. The institute has private funding, but the program does not cover every expense. Transportation, medication, additional imaging, and home care can become significant. Janet looked down. Avery recognized the expression. Her mother had already begun deciding which part of her life she could sacrifice first. The apartment, food, medication, Avery's education, perhaps all of it. We need time, Avery said. Of course. Dr. Wells gave them the documents and left the room. Damien remained by the window. Janet studied him. You have been quiet for almost 3 minutes. I was told waiting is a useful skill. Avery looked at him. He met her eyes, but he did not step closer. Janet opened the folder. There are 12 pages. Medical forms reproduce when no one is watching, Avery said. Her mother did not smile. She turned to Damien. You can pay for this. Avery stiffened. Mom, it is not an accusation. Damien answered carefully. Yes, and my daughter believes accepting your help would place a chain around her neck. Avery stood. I am in the room, Janet continued as though she had not spoken. Would it? Damien looked at Avery before answering. No. Words are easy for men with power. I know. What would stop you from using this later? Nothing except my word. Janet closed the folder. That is not enough. Damien did not appear offended. No, he said. It is not. He left the room without explanation. Avery watched the door close. Janet raised one eyebrow. Did I frighten him? No one frightens him. You do. That is different. Is it? Avery picked up the treatment documents. We are not discussing Damien. You are wearing his coat. Avery looked down at the black wool still around her shoulders. It was cold. Janet leaned back against the pillow. I have been alive long enough to know when a coat becomes a conversation. Avery removed it and folded it over the chair. That conversation is complicated. The worthwhile ones usually are. Avery sat beside the bed. You were kidnapped because of him. I was kidnapped because of a man who wanted power. Caleb belonged to Damien's world. So do hospitals, People die in them every day. That does not make the doctor responsible for every death. Avery looked at her mother. That comparison is terrible. It is not my best. Janet's voice softened. Do not pretend danger is not danger. But do not pretend fear makes every decision for you either. Avery stared at the pages in her lap. You told me not to spend all my tips on your prescription. I also told you to have a life. You ignore me selectively. A knock sounded at the door. Damien returned carrying a second folder. He placed it on the table between them. This is the Laura Cross Foundation. Avery opened the folder. The foundation had been established 6 years earlier. It funded cancer treatment, transportation medication, and home support for families in Illinois who could not afford private care. There were records of grants awarded to dozens of patients. Not one was connected to Damien's organization. Avery looked up. This already existed. Laura created it during her second year of treatment. Why did Dr. Wells not mention it? She did not know whether Janet qualified. I asked the foundation director to review the case. Janet turned a page. Who controls the money? A board of physicians and financial trustees. Do you? No. Can you stop the funding if Avery makes you angry? No. Can you force her to work for you? No. Can you demand repayment? No. Janet looked at him for a long moment. You prepared for difficult questions. I live among difficult people. Avery read the conditions twice. The foundation agreement contained no employment requirement, no personal guarantee, and no language connecting the treatment to Damien. If the board approves her, he said the support remains in place whether you speak to me again or not. Avery looked at him. You arranged it that way. Laura did. But you brought us here. Yes. Why Damien's gaze moved toward Janet. Because a door existed. He looked back at Avery. I thought you should be allowed to decide whether to walk through it. The answer carried no demand, no expectation. Avery looked at her mother. Janet placed her hand over Avery's. I want to apply. Fear rose inside Avery. The treatment could fail. It could make Janet sicker. It could give them hope only to take it away. Janet squeezed her hand. I know that look. What look? The one where you begin carrying every possible ending before one of them has happened. Avery lowered her eyes. I do not want you hurt. I am already hurt. Janet's voice remained gentle. I want the chance. Avery nodded. They completed the application that morning. 9 days later, the medical board accepted Janet into the program. Treatment began the following week. The first infusion lasted 7 hours. Avery sat beside her mother with a nursing textbook open on her lap. She had bought it from a used bookstore, telling herself she only wanted to understand the medication. Janet looked at the cover. You are reading again. I am checking something. You have checked the same page for 20 minutes. Avery closed the book. Across the room, Damien stood near the window speaking quietly into his phone. He had come without guards inside the treatment area. Dean remained in the lobby. Damien ended the call and approached. Janet looked at him. Do not stand there like a funeral director. I do not know what that means. It means sit down. He sat. Janet watched the medication move slowly through the clear tube into her arm. Did Laura lose her hair? Damien's expression changed. Yes. Did she hate it? At first. What happened after? She bought a red wig. Janet smiled. That sounds dramatic. She wore it to a charity dinner and told everyone it was natural. Did they believe her? No one told her otherwise. Damien almost smiled at the memory. Avery watched him. For the first time, Laura did not exist only as a wound. She existed as a woman with a red wig who enjoyed making powerful people uncomfortable. Janet reached for Damien's hand. He looked surprised, but allowed her to take it. Tell me more about her, Janet said. So he did. The treatment was harder than any of them expected. Janet became weak after the second round. Food tasted like metal. Her joints ached. Some mornings she could not make it from the bedroom to the kitchen without resting. Avery reduced her hours at the Marlowe. Maggie complained. "You have already missed 3 shifts. My mother is in treatment. Everyone has problems." Avery looked around the manager's office. A small camera blinked in the corner. Employee complaints sat unopened beneath Maggie's coffee cup. A schedule on the wall assigned younger servers to the customers known for touching them. For years, Avery had believed she needed the job too much to walk away. Now she realized Maggie depended on that belief. Avery removed her apron. "What are you doing?" "Leaving. You cannot quit in the middle of a shift. I just did." "You will not get a reference." Avery placed the apron on the desk. "Then I will survive without your opinion." She left through the front entrance. For once, she did not use the alley. Damien learned about it that evening. He called while Avery was making soup in Janet's apartment. "I heard you left the Marlowe. You have people watching my workplace know. Then how did you hear I own part of the building?" Avery closed her eyes. "Of course you do. The manager called one of my offices because she believes your connection to me gives her a reason to demand compensation." "For what?" "Emotional damage." Avery stared at the soup. "Did you pay her no? Did you threaten her no? Did you think about it?" "Yes." She could hear the restraint in his voice. Avery smiled despite herself. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. "Find another job. I own restaurants. That is exactly why I will not work at one. You assume I would give you a position. You would." "Yes. And I would never know whether I earned it." Silence followed. Damien did not argue. 3 days later, Avery received an email from Cross Hospitality inviting her to apply for an assistant operations position. She called Damien immediately. "You said you would not interfere." "I did not. Your company contacted me. The regional director reviewed staff turnover at the Marlowe after your manager filed a complaint. Your name appeared in customer evaluations and employee records. That sounds convenient. You are welcome to refuse the interview." "Did you tell them who I am?" "No." "Did you tell them what happened?" "No." "Did you tell them you know me?" "No." Avery leaned against the kitchen counter. "Are you lying?" "No." She believed him. That frightened her almost as much as distrust. Avery attended the interview. 3 candidates waited outside the conference room. One had managed a hotel. Another had 10 years of restaurant experience. The third carried a degree from a business school Avery could never have afforded. Avery nearly left. Then she thought of the unopened nursing letter, the final notice, the customer's hand around her wrist. She stayed. The regional director, Patricia Monroe, gave each candidate the same problem. A successful restaurant had high revenue but lost half its staff every year. Customer complaints were low. Employee complaints were high. "What would you examine first?" Patricia asked. "Management." Avery replied. "Not wages. Wages matter. But people stay in difficult jobs when they feel protected. They leave easier jobs when humiliation becomes part of the schedule." Patricia watched her. "Give me an example." Avery described how managers protected profitable customers instead of employees. She explained that harassment created scheduling problems, training costs, lower service quality, and hidden legal risk. She suggested anonymous reporting, clear removal policies for abusive guests, and performance reviews that included staff retention. Patricia closed the file. "You have never managed a restaurant." "No." "Why should I hire you because I know what bad management costs the people who cannot afford to leave?" Avery received the job. She did not learn until 2 weeks later that Damien had refused to participate in the hiring decision. At her first restaurant, she changed the closing schedule so employees no longer walked to the train alone after midnight. She created a policy allowing servers to refuse contact with abusive customers. She moved security cameras to cover service exits rather than dining tables. Revenue did not fall. Staff turnover did. 6 months later, Maggie applied for a management position at the same company. Avery sat across from her during the interview. Maggie looked less certain without the office at the Marlowe around her. "I know we had disagreements," Maggie said. "We did. I was under pressure. So were the servers. I did what was necessary for the business." Avery opened the interview file. "When a customer touches an employee without permission, who do you protect?" Maggie hesitated. "The situation depends on context." Avery waited. Maggie continued. "We cannot automatically accuse paying guests. Who do you protect?" Maggie looked down. Avery closed the file. "Thank you for your time." There was no satisfaction in it, only clarity. During those same months, Eli began trauma therapy. The first sessions were difficult. He refused to enter the office unless the door remained open. He would not sit with his back toward the window. When a car stopped too long near the building, he asked to leave. Damien responded by increasing security. The therapist asked him to reduce it. He almost ended the sessions. Avery found him outside the office one afternoon. "You cannot protect him from remembering. I can protect him from another attack, not by making every day look like the day he was taken." Damien looked through the glass. Eli sat at a table drawing a bridge with no roads leading away from it. "I do not know how to do less," Damien said. "Then do less badly." He looked at her. "That is terrible advice. It is realistic advice." Damien moved the guards outside Eli's direct view. He stopped checking every therapy note. He attended family sessions. During one, the therapist asked Eli what would make him feel safe at school. "I want to walk from the door to the car by myself." Damien answered immediately. "No." The therapist looked at him. Eli looked down. Avery said nothing. Damien saw her silence and understood that the decision belonged to him. The following afternoon, they waited outside Eli's school. The distance between the entrance and the car was less than 20 feet. 4 guards watched from separate positions. Damien stood beside the vehicle with both hands at his sides. Eli stepped through the school doors. He paused. Then he began walking. No one touched him. No one surrounded him. Damien's body remained rigid until Eli reached the car. Eli opened the door himself. "You can breathe now," he said. Damien released the air from his lungs. "I was breathing." "No, you were not." Avery laughed. Damien gave her a look that failed to hide his relief. Janet's 3rd scan showed improvement. The tumors had begun to shrink. Dr. Wells warned them that progress could reverse. There were still difficult decisions ahead. Janet listened, asked questions, and returned home with a red scarf wrapped around her head. She had lost most of her hair 2 weeks earlier. Damien saw the scarf and stopped. Janet raised her chin. "What?" "Nothing. You are thinking about Laura's wig." "Yes," Janet smiled. "Red is a powerful color." Avery looked between them. Neither spoke about the fact that grief and hope had begun occupying the same room. One evening, Janet handed Avery the nursing school letter. "I found it inside your locker box. You searched my things, I raised you." Privacy became theoretical years ago. Avery opened the envelope. The re-entry offer had expired. A second page listed the next application date. "You left because I got sick," Janet said. "I left because we needed money. Both can be true. I have work now. You have always had work. I cannot manage school, the restaurant, and your treatment." Janet leaned forward. "You have spent years keeping everyone else alive. You are allowed to return to your own life." Avery applied to the part-time nursing program. When she was accepted, Damien offered a driver. "No car waiting outside the classroom," Avery said. "It is safer." "No. What if the class ends after dark?" "I will take the train." Avery. No driver. He looked frustrated. Then he nodded. Dean can wait 2 blocks away. 1 block, 2, 1.5. Damien considered it. Agreed. Avery smiled. You are learning. Slowly. He was learning. Not perfectly. Several weeks later, Avery discovered that Dean had investigated one of her nursing instructors. She confronted Damien in his office. You checked Professor Miller's background. He had a criminal charge. From a protest when he was 19. I did not know that until Dean checked. You promised not to make decisions about my life without me. I did not make a decision. You gathered information I did not ask for. Damien stood behind his desk. He spends 4 hours a week near you. So do 40 other people. I cannot ignore risk. You can respect boundaries. He opened his mouth to defend himself. Then he stopped. The silence lasted. You are right, he said. Avery had prepared for anger. Explanation. Control. The apology left her with nowhere to place the argument. I ordered the file destroyed, he continued. That does not fix it. I know. I need time. His face tightened. Every part of him wanted to close the distance. He remained where he was. Take it. Avery left. Damien did not call that night. He did not send flowers. He did not place a car outside her apartment. He waited. 3 days later, Avery returned. You hated that, she said. Yes. You still waited. Yes. Why? Because you asked me to. She crossed the room. The answer mattered more than any apology. Months passed. Janet completed the most difficult stage of treatment. Eli returned to school full-time. Avery balanced restaurant shifts, nursing classes, and evenings with her mother. Damien remained part of her life without trying to define all of it. After Janet's next scan, Dr. Wells entered the room carrying a small smile. The treatment is working. Avery reached for her mother's hand. Janet closed her eyes. For several seconds, no one spoke. The word remission was still too distant to claim, but hope no longer felt irresponsible. That evening, Avery found Damien on the hospital roof. Chicago stretched beneath them, alive with traffic windows and distant train lights. He stood near the railing with his coat open to the wind. Avery joined him. She is responding. I heard. Of course you did. Dr. Wells called the foundation board. Avery leaned against the railing. You opened the door. She chose to walk through it. Avery looked at him. You remembered. I remember most things you say. That sounds dangerous. It is. The wind lifted her hair. Damien did not reach for it. You do not owe me anything, he said. I know. I cannot promise my life will become simple. I know that too. There may always be men who want what I have. Then stop collecting so many enemies. I will consider it. Avery smiled. Damien's expression became serious. I can promise that when a choice concerns you, it remains yours. Avery studied him. Months earlier, he had told her staying at the hospital was not a request. Now he stood close enough to touch her and waited. That is a better promise, she said. His eyes moved to her mouth. May I kiss you? This time, Avery did not hesitate. Yes. He touched her face carefully. The kiss was slow. No possession. No command. Only 2 people meeting in the narrow space between fear and trust. On Avery's birthday, Eli handed her a small box during dinner. Inside was a silver bracelet with a compass attached to it. Avery lifted it from the velvet. What does it mean? Eli touched the broken crown symbol on Damien's ring. That belongs to Dad's people. He pointed to the compass. This is ours. Ours people who help you find the way home. Avery looked at Damien. He shook his head slightly. The gift had not been his idea. Eli had chosen it. Avery fastened the bracelet around her wrist. 1 year after the kidnapping, Snow returned to Chicago. Avery, Damien, and Eli stood behind the Marlowe beneath the yellow service light. The alley had changed. New cameras covered both entrances. The delivery crates had been replaced. The old trash can was gone. Eli stood at the place where Avery had found him. He looked down at the pavement. Damien moved closer. Eli raised one hand. "I am okay." Damien stopped. Avery watched the boy breathe through the memory. In, then out. "Are you ready?" she asked. Eli nodded. He walked toward the end of the alley alone. Avery and Damien followed several steps behind. At the sidewalk, Eli turned. "You two are slow." Avery laughed. Damien reached for her hand but stopped before touching it. Avery closed the distance herself. She threaded her fingers through his. Together they stepped out of the alley and into the light of the city. Cars moved through the snow. Trains thundered above the streets. People hurried past without knowing that a year earlier a frightened boy had been left bleeding only a few feet away. Damien had once believed love meant building walls around everyone he could not bear to lose. Avery had once believed survival meant never needing anyone. Eli had taught them something neither power nor pain could explain. Sometimes love meant holding on. Sometimes it meant stepping back. And sometimes home was not the place where fear could never reach you. It was the place where someone remained beside you when it did.